guys, Allison here. Welcome back. I am the boardest of the housewives, and welcome to the second episode of the Bored Housewife podcast. I'm really excited that you guys decided to take another listen after hearing the first episode. I was a little nervous myself getting here. I video edited myself, and it's hard to listen, watch yourself be goofy and silly when you're not used to it. So for that reason, I was thinking about how to proceed with the next few episodes, and I decided I would just continue to share some more information about myself. Maybe some of you other housewives out there, or just anyone who's listening, can relate to some of these stories. They're kind of different. And so the title of the episode, Where Do the Eccentric Come From?, I think really fits me. I feel like I am a bit of an eccentric person, and part of that is because I've been in so many different places around our country, and I think that's really kind of added to my collective growth as a person as to who I am sitting here today. So my favorite question that I get asked sometimes, or not favorite question, is where are you from? And once you hear this story, you'll realize it's a very complicated answer, and it leaves people wishing they hadn't asked. So I can't wait to share with you guys how I've gotten to this point of self-rediscovery, and why I feel like it's important to make this podcast. So sit back, get a drink, or just take a listen, and let's have some fun. Should be a simple answer, right? So originally, most people talk about the place they were born. Some people decide to use the current city that they live in. But I feel like for me, it's very personal to who I am. So originally born and raised in Iowa, Des Moines, Iowa. So I can tell people, oh, I'm from Iowa. Well, when you live in Alabama, then there's usually a follow-up question. Or if you live in New York, there's a follow-up question. Like when you live in some odd places and you've come from the Midwest to give a simple, oh, I lived in Iowa, then people are like, oh, how did you get here? And then you go on this big journey, and then they wish that they had never asked the question, because they're like, okay. So a lot of times when people ask me where I'm from, because I've lived, this is my favorite thing to say, I was raised in Iowa, grew up in New York, spent a small amount of time in Southern California, LA Oceanside, and now I live in Alabama. So that's a pretty loaded question, right? So I love to tell people that I'm American. And when I say that, people just look at me like I'm the rudest person in the world. Like, duh, bitch, we're all Americans, okay? But then it's like, then I laugh. Okay, so the question goes like this. Oh, where are you from? Oh, I'm American. This is them. Okay. And then I laugh, and then this is me. It's funny, right? Because, we're all Americans, but I'm from, a lot of different places. Oh, where did you live? What places have you lived? And then I get into the whole, Iowa, New York, and then by the end of the conversation, because it's never simple. It's never like, oh, I was raised in Iowa, grew up in New York, flew and lived in LA for a very small amount of time, married my husband, lived in Oceanside, so still Southern California, and then moved to Alabama. And they're just like, yeah, okay. And it's like, no, it's not that simple. I have to go on my whole life journey story of well, I was raised in Iowa by a single mother, and she brought me up in this world. And then at 18 years old, I ventured out. And, it's like this whole thing. And people are just I don't know why I can't just say something simple. But for me, it is about, if I say I'm from Iowa, it's sometimes not even about that follow-up question. It's also about, like, I don't feel like Iowa, I'm like, I definitely still hold some Midwestern values, but like Iowa isn't necessarily my home in the same way that other people might say some places are home. So it's like I still have family there. My grandparents, my mom, they still, like, aunts and uncles and stuff, they still live there. And I go back and visit as often as I can. But it's like I don't feel like the state and the culture of Iowa and the Midwest represents me as a person as much anymore. When I lived in New York, it was a lot easier because unless I was in New York City, and then people, like, no one is from New York. Like, some people are from New York, but, like, most people are, like, from somewhere else and they move there. And so, living in New York, I could just say, like, oh, I'm from Iowa, and people would be like, oh, okay, cool, you're from Iowa. But then when we go travel somewhere, people would be like, where are you guys from? And we'd be like, we're from New Yorkers. We're from New York. It's such an easier, like, place to say, and people are just like, oh, okay, cool. And I felt like at that time in my life, the city and the culture of the city just really represented who I was as a person, and it felt really good saying that I was a New Yorker. Well, when you move away from New York and you're not originally from New York, you can't really tell people that you're a New Yorker anymore. It's kind of weird. So then when I moved to LA, I got a few opportunities to tell people that I was from LA. But that's really when I was like, I just don't feel like LA is my, like, Southern California. I didn't spend enough time there to really, like, get into the culture of, like, what that is. And it's a really nice place to live. But I still was, like, a New York City girl. And, anybody who knows New York from LA, yes, they're both big cities, but they're very different cities and very different sort of just personalities and stuff that want to live. Like, you can definitely be bi-coastal, you can definitely whatever, but I'm going on a tangent. But the point is, I just never, like, felt to the point of in LA where I could be like, oh, I'm from LA. So then we didn't even spend enough time in Southern California. My husband gets on recruiting duty, and you kind of can try to get an area that you want to live in. You can, like, put in, like, a certain area district that you like to try. So as we're discussing it, it's like he's trying to look at whatever the best option is for him. And no offense to the Midwest, but we both are from Iowa. And I'm like, we've done the Midwest. I just want to try. I've done the East Coast. I've done the West Coast. I just want to go somewhere else completely different, see what else this country has to offer. And he was on board with it. So we put in for Nashville, and we got Northern Alabama. So pretty close. And it's definitely a lot different. But as any Alabamian would say, I am not Southern by any means. Like, the culture down here, it's not far off from the Midwest, but it's enough. Like, and it's not just in the accent. Like, obviously, when I open my mouth, people are like, yeah, you were definitely not from the South. So that was like, I've tried telling people we're from Alabama a few times when we've been on a trip. And they're just like, okay. Like, they don't believe us because everyone who lives in the South has a Southern accent. And it's like, yeah. So, it's like the culture is just very different. And so it's like I just haven't really, like, and I haven't lived here. I think a lot of that too is like you got to live somewhere for quite a while. And maybe that's why I felt more comfortable talking with New York, like saying that New York was my home because I lived there much longer than, like, these other places. But it's weird because I'm starting to get up. I've been away from Iowa now for 12 years, I think, 13 years, and I can't do math, 12 years, yeah, and it's like, I'm getting to that point where it's like, I've almost been gone for as long as I lived there. I mean, I still have a few more years to catch up to that, but, so, yeah, like, where do people come from? What makes, like, I think really where you live and, like, kind of those experiences, because anybody who's traveled this country or gone to another country knows that each place has its own culture and, like, way of doing things that can differ. Like, just the way we even talk about, like, there's so many different names for a shopping cart. Like, some places call it very formal, a shopping cart. In the Midwest, you call it a cart. In the East Coast, they call it a wagon. And down here in the South, they call it a buggy. So it's like, it's just funny how these different terms and everything are different around the country, and just how people interact sometimes, even though we all are Americans. So, yeah, it's fun. It's a fun way to break the ice sometimes, but sometimes people are like, okay, you're rude, bitch. Fine, don't tell me where you're from. And I'm just like, no, sorry, that's not what I mean. I know you're American too. I'm making a joke, but it doesn't come off that way, I guess. Cheers. I'm drinking bourbon right now. I'm still kind of nervous making these, so I have to have a little bit of liquid courage. No judgment. This bourbon is Basil Hayden's. I don't know if you guys are very familiar with bourbon, but it has become one of my hobbies. I love bourbon, I love wine, and I've gotten into cigars. Don't know a lot about them yet, but starting to try to get a little bit more knowledge about those. Just a really weird story, I'll tell you. Why bourbon? Why cigars, Allison? I was under this impression that Hollywood was stuck in the 1940s, and that the movie producers were all men who enjoyed a nice bourbon and cigar at the Playboy Mansion after work. I don't know what the hell I was thinking, but I forced myself to like things, and this is not the first time. There's countless things throughout my life that I'm like, oh, I want to fit into this, so I'm going to make myself like it. And I'm actually glad that I did. I love bourbon now, and it's kind of fun because you get into, like, you don't realize, like, how many things have, like, like a whole, I don't want to keep saying culture, but basically like a whole culture, community, just all different sorts of stuff that you can try. I think is cool. And so cigars is really complicated. I thought wine was complicated. Cigars really confused me. So I think that one's going to take a little bit more time. But I know how to smoke it. I know how to cut it and smoke it. And so even though I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, as far as, like, I can kind of tell, like, the difference of flavors and stuff. But yeah, so that's why I'm a lady who likes her dark liquor, her cigars, because I thought I was going to be dealing with some 1940 movie producers, good old boys club. But the good old boys club now is like, I actually don't really know. Maybe it doesn't exist, but you guys know it exists. But I think it's more like sports, like fantasy sports clubs and stuff. I don't know. I was like, well, I'm out. I can only do so much. So I just got to wait for a producer who likes to sit back and enjoy a cigar and a bourbon at the Playboy Mansion, I guess. Okay, so like I was saying, I think it's really cool having lived in all these different places, and it's definitely brought me a lot of different experiences, stuff that I've been able to bring towards my writing, stuff that I just am able to have, like, kind of fun and cool conversations with people about, because I've lived in so many different areas of this country. And I do feel like I have a very well-rounded understanding of our country because of this. I've seen big city, I've seen small city, I've seen rural city, so it's kind of cool. And one thing that I love about my having lived in so many different places and only being 30 years old, I'm officially 30 years old, guys, I don't know if you knew that, but yeah, is that, like, so I picked up traits from all the different cities, all the different areas. So, like, Iowa, right? Born and raised in Iowa. I've, like, my core values, my morals and everything definitely come from the Midwest. I think the Midwest family has so many great things to offer. They make really great kids. I'm not just saying that because I'm from there. Like, it just is a really nice place to grow up. And you learn how to work hard. You learn how to, like, everyone that I meet from the Midwest is not afraid to get their hands dirty. They're not afraid to hustle. Even like meeting my husband, we didn't actually meet in Iowa. We met somewhere else. And there was just a connection there that was like different from other men that I had dated before, because it's just like we were on the same page about morals and values and like how we felt about certain things, which I think is really important. And so I definitely, like, in that whole Iowa nice thing, I definitely have that instilled in me. And it was almost to a point that it faulted me, right? Because it's like, oh, I'll get out of your way so that you can, go make it first place. I feel like, okay, that wasn't a very good example, but I feel like Midwesterners are just like almost too nice sometimes. And I definitely was to a certain extent. Don't let them fool you. They can be a little tricky sometimes too. You guys are a little catty sometimes. But overall, like, you go out of your way to help someone. Like, if you're out there shoveling snow in your driveway and you see your neighbor next door, you'll stop what you're doing and go help your neighbor next door. Like, that's Iowa nice. And you just don't, that's not everywhere. So that's what I really love, that, like, I got instilled, like, my morals, my values, my ethics, that sort of stuff. So turning 18 and moving to New York City, pretty sure everyone thought that the city was going to eat me whole. It did not. Hello, I am still here. The plan was to become a dancer, and I went to college while I was there, like a professional dancer, not some like stripper crazy hoe dancer. Like, I wanted to be on Broadway. I wanted to be a rockette. It didn't work out that way. But the cool thing about New York is that you have to have grit to live there. You have to be assertive. You have to step outside of your comfort zone, because if you don't, you're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to get a job. You're not even going to get the job that's like the hostess in the restaurant, or like the busboy in the restaurant, or the dishwasher in the restaurant, because everybody there is just fighting to stay alive. Everybody there has a dream, and this job, this thing is a means to an end, or this is going to get me where I need to be. And so the hustle, the grind, the grit of that city is so true and so real. So, like, I'll tell you the story. When I first went there, I was actually staying there the summer before I moved, and it was a great learning experience for me. And I was trying to get a subway card. So in New York, when you use their transportation system, you get this month-long card. And at the time, I think it was like $100, or maybe just a little bit under. And so, naive me, I had $100 bill. That's what I had. And I'm down in the subway, and I put it in the machine. Well, my mom and I had been there to visit another time, so this is how I knew how to do all this stuff. And she put in too much money for a subway card, and when it gave her change back, it came back all in dollar coins. And so we got like $15 worth of dollar coins and change. And so I put my money in, and then the machine tells me I have to have exact change. And I didn't have exact change. All I had was the $100 bill. So I start freaking out. Also, I tried to buy my card during rush hour in Times Square. Like, total naive idiot, totally stupid, right? If you've ever been to New York and you've ever been in that area, it's just like, I obviously didn't know what I was doing. So I'm like standing there about ready to burst into tears, and I got this guy behind me who's like the most New York of a New Yorker could ever be. He's like, huffing and puffing, and he's like, come on, like, I'm gonna be late, like, what the fuck, lady, come on, like, oh my god. And like, he's talking to people behind him, and he's like, she don't know what she's doing. And it's like, that's my New York accent, guys. And I was just like about ready to turn into tears. So I whip around. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I have like tears in my eyes. And he was like, okay. And I was like, I have $100 bill in there. I was like, it says I have to have the exact change. Do you have change for 100? And the guy's just like, whoa, And so he's like, well, let's try to figure this out. And then at that moment, he helped me. And, we both couldn't kind of figure it out. And so I just decided to like go, fuck it. Because I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to push cancel on this shit. And I'm going to get $100 coins. Like, that's what I was terrified of happening. So I was like, I have this purse, like, it'll be like I won the lottery and I will go to the bank and it'll be fine. And I'm like crying. And so I just hit cancel. And sweet Lord Jesus, my $100 bill came out. I snatched it up. I put it in my purse. I run away crying like, I'm so sorry. It was a very traumatic day. But like that day, I learned this huge lesson. Like, you just have to go for it. You have to be upfront with people. You have to like do that. And then once you're like that, you earn respect from people in that city. And I've realized going forward, sometimes my New York edge is a little too edgy and you gotta dial it down a little bit because, you don't always need to like scream at people. But the cool thing is I learned how to put myself out there, step out of my comfort zone. It's okay when people tell you no. It's okay when people yell at you. It's okay. Like, it has nothing to do with you. I mean, it might have something to do with you, but it's like you can't control how people react. And I really learned that from New York. So then moving to LA, I was really nervous. I already had a friend who lived in LA, but she was like in and out at the time. She definitely made the transition easier, but like, guys, I am just not cool enough to live there, okay? I tried so hard, but I am just a giant nerd. And it's like everyone in LA is just so cool and like so laid back. And I can relax and stuff, but listen to me. Like, you guys are already on the second episode here. I am a hyper motherfucker. So, like, I don't just sit, and I want to, like, talk to people in bars. Like, LA, you don't do that as much, Like, people are friendly and people are nice. But Southern California, it's just, like, you gotta really pull shit out of people. They're not as chatty as New Yorkers are, and they're not as like eager to meet people, I guess. And again, everyone is just so cool. So what I learned from LA is that I'm not cool, and maybe I picked up a few cool points by saying that I lived in LA. Maybe that's what I got from that. But I don't know. Here I mostly get dirty looks. I'll tell you guys a story in a minute. It's so funny. But anyways, so no offense, California. Beautiful state, but I live in Alabama. You guys get it. So now we live in the South. Sorry, I have to look at my notes to keep me on track. Now we live in the South, and I've just gotten really humble here. Part of it is being married to my husband now. He is a huge driving force in knocking the champagne out of my pretty little hand. But I love it. I'm really happy for it. I think living in New York and LA, it's just, the culture around those cities, it's just you want to be seen, you want to have nice things, you want to do cool stuff, you want to get drinks after work, all that. And here we just don't really have the same. It's just not the same. Like, I'm sure there's areas that you can do that, but it's, I guess in our area that we live in, it's just not like super common. And it's also kind of harder too, because like Uber isn't an option. So you can't like get drunk at happy hour and get an Uber home and pick your car up in the morning or take a subway home. So you really have to like watch yourself. And I just, it's kind of funny. Like, I don't know if it's the friends we've met down here or what, but I just have felt like I've gotten much more humble. I guess a little bit of tracking back. When I moved to LA, if you girls ever see this, my old roommates, you girls are the sweetest girls ever. We just have very different lifestyles and standards of living. So please don't be offended by this. I hope maybe you'll like it, because you girls were really cool. But I called it the Hippie House. I was really fortunate. This girl I worked with, I was like, had to be out of my friend. She was letting me sublet her place, and then she was coming back, and so I had to get a new place, and I was having a really hard time finding something that I could afford. And so this girl that I worked with sent me up with a friend of hers who was leaving town. And then when she came back, there was like 3 bedrooms in the house, and like another roommate like had left. So I got to stay there for like a while, and it worked out really nice. It was a 3-bedroom house, laundry in the house. I had my own bathroom at one point. There was a backyard. The girls were really sweet. Like, it was totally fine, but they were a little bit more free-spirited than I was. So I don't smoke marijuana. Like, they both were kind of free with that. It's California. But there were just like little things around the house, and I'm not going to get into it this time, but it just wasn't comfortable for me, so I called it the Hippie House. And that was really a moment where I had to take a step back because this was all I could afford. And, just like be like, reflect on my life, because living in New York, I just lived too much beyond my means of what I could afford. And LA, I really was like, I have to stop that behavior because I'm not going to help myself doing that. Like, I'm not going to be able to save for anything. And I had another humbling experience, which I'll tell you guys all about that someday. I wrote a pilot about it. It's cathartic mostly. I don't know if it's any good. But anyways, I'll tell you guys about that story. But anyway, so stuff like that was already kind of happening. And then meeting my husband, he's such a down-to-earth guy. He can hang with the classy of the classiest, but, he loves riding dirt bikes and camping and hiking and drinking beer. And so I'm like, okay, like, I kind of got to not that I got to change myself, because he can do the other stuff too, but I have to be willing to do that as well, which I do like that. I love camping. I love hiking. It's just, I hadn't really done a lot of it in my adult years. So, moving down to Alabama, it's like, hello, I got snakes in my backyard. I got a snake in my roof, I'm pretty sure. It's cold right now, and he's hibernating. His name is Bert. We'll talk about all the fun critters down here in southern Alabama, or in the south, in northern Alabama. So, it's just a completely, you want to talk about culture shock. Like, people, when I moved from Iowa to New York, they're like, oh, was it a culture shock? I was like, no, not really. Like, I lived near Des Moines. Like, it's not that I lived in a giant city like New York, but it's still a city, Like, I live in rural Alabama now. Like, I live near water. I see a lake. Like, there is no fast, like, I don't know what I'm saying. But anyways, there's not a Target, okay? We did get a Starbucks, which I don't even like Starbucks. But it's like, things that I'm used to just don't exist here. And so you got to get used to those things. And then it's like, my neighbors are batshit crazy. You can just shoot animals in your backyard. I mean, like, it's wild. It's like another place. And so, like, one of the funnest things that I've learned to do is pee in the water. I know that sounds so crazy, but like I think I mentioned in the last episode, our friends have a pontoon boat. So we're out on the lake all day. Now, they actually have like a little porta potty on their boat, but it's such a bitch to like get the thing put up and everything. And also, I'm a bitch that I can't just go in the lake. Like, everyone goes in the lake. And I'm so special about it. Like, no one can be around me. I go and I stand on the ladder. My husband has to come over and hold my hand and keep me company. It's like, I can't even just like do it while we're all like swimming out. Like, everyone else is. And I know everyone else is because we're all drinking all day long. But the South is really, really instilling more of those, like, that humbleness that I definitely grew up with, but maybe even more so. Like, it's okay to get dirty. It's okay to get your hands dirty, and it's okay to pee in the water. Like, it's okay to shoot guns. Sorry for anybody who's offended by that, but, like, it's fun, and it's really cool, and I never did any of this stuff before, so I'm really happy to have this opportunity, because I feel like it's really starting, like, I'm really rounding out, like, talk about a well-rounded person, yeah. So, one thing that's, like, really fun now, well, I don't know if it's fun, but while, like, living down here, everyone knows that you're not from here for obvious various reasons, but number one reason is I ain't got a southern accent to keep up with him with, So it's like that's my northern Alabama accent. I tried to figure out different accents. So this is my Georgia accent. If you can hear, I pronounce my consonants a little bit more, whereas northern Alabama is you kind of drop your consonants. So it's like, hi guys, I'm from northern Alabama, and my name is Allison, and I live in Gunnersville, and yeah, it's real nice to meet you. So I don't know if you can hear the difference in that. I'll watch this video and I'll decide if that's gonna make the cut. But it's like, not only do people not from here know you're not from Alabama, but the people obviously who live here and who are from here know that I'm not. And so one fun thing, and this is so insane. I am such an insane person. So I still have my Southern California ID. And the reason why is really complicated, and I'll share that story in a minute. But it's funny because the grocery store that I go to, they can sell wine and beer in grocery stores here. The grocery store is really crazy about checking IDs. Even though I see like the same two ladies checking me out every time, I gotta get my ID out to show them. So it says California. Again, Alabamians have some interesting ideas about Californians, as I'm sure Californians have about Alabamians. So, they look at my ID and they're like, oh, California. And I'm like, yeah. And then I go into this whole story of my husband's in the military, because when you're on a special duty like this, you don't have to get that state's ID. And I decided to keep my Southern California ID for one reason, and I'll tell you that story in a minute. And then the second reason was because we don't know where we're going to next. If we go back to Southern California, I don't want to have to go through the process of getting another ID from there again. So I'm like, oh, I'll just keep my ID, because it's totally, I have to carry around my military ID too, but it's totally fine if you're on this special duty that you can keep it. So I get a lot of oh, okay, and it's like, oh, she's from California. And so then I have to go in the story because I don't want these people to hate me. I'm like, no, but I'm actually really from Iowa. And they're like, oh, well, how did you get, and then it's just like, oh, okay, well, grew up in Iowa, went to school in New York, lived in LA, met my husband, got married, moved to Alabama. And they're just like, oh, okay. So again, going back to the whole, I'm really sorry I asked that question, lady. I'm like, I'm sorry. My life is complicated. But anyway, so the reason why I would not get an Alabamian ID, or Alabama ID, whatever you want to call it, is because this is what happened. So my husband and I got married almost 3 years ago in February of 2018. And we got married in Vegas at the Flamingo Hotel. We met in Vegas, so we thought that would be appropriate to get married there. Plus, we both just love Vegas, and it's a really fun place and super easy to get married there. So, but the Flamingo was really great because it was a lovely setting within, the whole party atmosphere. So, husband and I get married, wake up the next day, and I have, the phone was in bed with me. My phone was in my bed with me, and I have this notification from Discover Card. And it's there's been fraudulent charges on your card. And so, most of the time these charges are they got stolen off the internet, So I just had to verify whether it was me or not. So I went to call them. They actually requested that I call. And I said, no, those aren't the charges that I made. And the woman was like, okay, that's not a problem. We just need to, before we can proceed, I need to know that you have the card on you. So I'm looking around our hotel room. Guys, this was our wedding night, okay? So I'm butt-ass naked. My husband's butt-ass naked in bed. There's my dress, just shit everywhere. In an effort to like make my room sexy, I guess my friends, they like decorated it with like rose petals and like fun like sexy stuff. They like shoved all of our junk in the closet. So I'm on the phone with this lady and I'm like, yeah, my purse is here somewhere. Let me try to find it. And I'm like digging through stuff. And because we had gone down, I had like between dinner and like going out, I had like gone up to my room and like left my purse up there and like just took my ID, and my husband had his wallet. So I knew I left my purse in there, and so I like couldn't find it. And so I'm like told the lady, I'm like, I'm really sorry, I'm gonna have to call you back. I can't find it. And she's like, okay, no problem. Just let us like call us back when you know. So I call my friends and I'm like, hey, did you guys do something with my purse? And they're like, no. And then we're like all trying to like hash out like what had happened. And we are like, my one friend was finally like, you know what? No, I know you left your purse up there. You left it on the counter. I was like, I thought I did too. And I was like, this is so weird. So around this time, my husband starts like getting himself up and he was like, do you know where my phone is? And I was like, no, I don't. And I was like trying to call it, wasn't answering. Or like we couldn't hear it. And he's like, maybe I gave it to my best man. And then he's like, where's my wallet? And so we're thinking like maybe he gave both of them to his best man. But then as we start reliving the night, before we went to bed that night, before we went to bed that night, we had stopped and got burgers at this little place near our hotel. We got all the way up to our room, and our room was having issues with our room key. I don't know if we kept putting it too close to our cell phones or what, but it kept like dying on us. So we're trying to get into our room, and it's not working. I'm done. My feet are killing me, and I'm hungry. So we decided to sit in the hallway and eat our burgers. And I have videos. We both have videos of us eating the burger in the hallway. So then my husband, I waited in the hallway, and he went down to the front desk with wallet in hand, with phone in hand, and he had to have all that stuff so that he had his ID so that he could get a new key for the room. So we're like realizing like, no, we had all of like that stuff with us in the room. So then, long story short, and I'll post a video on here to show you guys how people can break into your hotel rooms. Somebody broke into our hotel room in the middle of the night while we were passed out asleep in bed after consummating our marriage, mind you. Luckily, I had my cell phone in my bed with me, but my husband's cell phone and wallet were next to my purse. And basically what we think happened was the guy came into our room, saw that we were in there. I don't think he probably expected to see us in there, and I'm really glad he didn't, because like I said, my husband's a Marine, and that guy would have gotten his ass beaten by a naked Marine. And that's kind of funny to think about. But anyways, brand new husband beating the shit out of some guy butt-ass naked that's not supposed to be in our hotel room. So anyways, he got into our hotel room, and the way he did it is we didn't put the night lock on it. You guys have to put the night lock on your rooms, because otherwise, because of fire safety reasons, they can actually get in through your room with little devices, or even that little thing, the privacy thing that hangs on your door. They can even put it in and get it at the right angle, and they can open your door from inside. So that's how that works. It's really scary. So basically came in, probably just like kind of freaked that we were in there, and then like took our stuff and left. And so long story short, wrapping it up here, the guy, we think, actually returned my husband's cell phone, because they were able to like log into one of the like Google tracker things, kind of like Find My iPhone scenario, and they were messaging the guy, and there were a lot of like, you know, nice moments that my husband had like filmed on his phone, like of my grandpa and I dancing together, and just like a lot of fun stuff like that would have been completely gone. And luckily we got the phone back, and so all the other stuff was gone, but I mean the important stuff we found. So, with this being said, this is why this story is so important to why I won't get an Alabama ID. Bear with me, guys. So, when you get married, you have all this list of stuff of like how you have to change your name. And I'm not just like getting like a new name, like I'm also like getting a military ID and all these different stuff so I can like get on my husband's insurance and all of that fun stuff. And so, you got to get a new social security card. You have to fix your passport. Like there's just like a laundry list of things that nobody talks about. And it's really just time consuming and icky government red tape bullshit kind of stuff. So I had lost my ID. And at this point, so this is what happened right before that, too. My ID expired on my birthday. My birthday is January 17th. My ID expired on my birthday. So right before we got married, I had to get a new ID. I wanted to get a real ID because that's what everyone has to get now so that you can travel through the states with your government-issued ID. And so I was trying to get the real ID. Well, they weren't issuing real IDs until literally like a day or two after my birthday. And I was like, fuck, like this sucks. Like, and it's not like I could postpone because then you have to go through like all of the stupid tests and stuff, you know? So like I had to renew my ID like on my birthday. That was like the last day I could do it. So I had to renew it and I was like, whatever, I'll just like get that. And then after we get married, then I'll get my new one. Well, then my ID was stolen. So then I had to like go and try to get another ID. So I'm like waiting in line. At this point though, I had already applied for a new social security card. And because I was trying to change my name, so I had my birth certificate, my social security card, and then my marriage certificate. And I was trying to change my name to my new last name. And I waited in line because it was like important that I get it because I didn't have a driver's license. And I showed several people the documents that I had like that worked there. And they're like, oh yeah, looks good. I get up there. They're like, yeah, we can't issue an ID. I was devastated, guys, because not only could I not get my ID, but then if I didn't have a driver's license, I couldn't get my military ID. So you see where we're going like this? Like, it's just, I can't do this without this, without this. And so I started crying and screaming at the lady at the DMV. I'm really sorry, lady. You were kind of a bitch, though. But finally, her supervisor came around and she's like, no, we can't issue a real ID, but we can give you a California regular ID. And then once you get all your documents up to date with your full name, then come back. So finally, I was like, okay, I guess that's what I'll do so I can go get my marriage ID, like my military ID. How many times have I said ID in this story? Anyways, so I finally was like, whatever, just give me something so that I have something out of this. Got my military ID, new social security card came in. Then I actually made an appointment so that I didn't have to wait in line all day. The lady freaked me out. Like, I almost didn't have something else, but it all worked out. And I got my California real ID. It does not expire until, we're out of here from Alabama. We're already to wherever else we're going. So I'm like, I've gone to the DMV 3 times within the last 2 months, 3 months, whatever it was. I was like, I am not getting rid of this. I'm keeping it until it expires. So now I get dirty looks from Alabamians at the grocery store or in the bars when they check your IDs. But it's worth it because I went through hell to get that ID. And thank you, guy who broke into our hotel room. You're an asshole. And I hope you stubbed your toe really hard because you're just a jerk. Anyways. So another fun story, if you guys can continue to bear with me here. Why Alabama? Why Nashville? I think I mentioned before that we just wanted to try another part of the country. I kind of wanted New Orleans, and I wanted, but that was like definitely not going to be an option. And I wanted somewhere where I could potentially still do film. Nashville has like an okay scene, I think, and stuff is like happening there. So I thought maybe that would be a cool place to see what's going on. And we got the furthest from Nashville that we could possibly get. So that worked out so well. But I guess the universe was like, hey, you just need a break. Like, you just need to take this time and do your own thing, which I haven't, I guess I've been doing nothing. That's my own thing. But no, so it was funny, though, that story. It's like he reached out. So my husband, he lived, sorry, I'm like breathing really heavy. Okay, so the story goes, when you go to recruiting school, you're there for like 2.5 months, 2 months or something like that. And so we found out that was what he was going to be doing. And like, you don't find out where you're going until like you only have like a few weeks left. Like, you're moving and you don't know where you're moving to in the country. Like, you can try your best to kind of find a spot, like reach out to a district. So that's like what my husband did. He lived in Nashville for a little while before he entered the Marine Corps. So he reached out to the Nashville Sergeant Major and asked her, I'm like familiar with the area. I think I would really do well in this area. And then based off of like what their needs are, she'll like evaluate or he, in this case it's a she, but they'll evaluate. And they have like this kind of, what's it called in sports where they, like a scouting, it feels like a scouting thing, or like a draft. Yeah, that's it. That's better. It's kind of like a draft. Like, I want this guy. I want this guy. So anyways, we ended up getting in Nashville. And so how it kind of goes down, it's like, okay, Cliff Champ, Nashville. And then she's like, Huntsville, Nashville. But so the Nashville is called the RS, the recruiting station. And then there are all these sub-recruiting stations. So the recruiting substation is the RSS. So you don't necessarily get Nashville, but you could get somewhere like kind of near there. But we got RSS Huntsville, which is in northern Alabama, because that's still part of their district. We did not know anything about Huntsville, Alabama, so we were looking up Huntsville, Tennessee. So my husband calls me. He's like, we got Nashville, baby. I'm like, woohoo, yes. And then he's like, oh, actually, it's RSS Huntsville. I'm like, okay. So I'm like Googling Huntsville, Tennessee. And there is a Huntsville, Tennessee, and it's a small freaking town of like 1,000 people. And it's literally underneath Daniel Boone National Forest. There we go. And I'm just like shaking. I'm like, we are literally going to the boonies, honey. And he was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And he's scared. Because we're still like within our first year of marriage. There's all these horrible rumors about recruiting duty, that you're going to divorce and it's going to go up in flames and it's going to be so bad. And so he's just like, my wife is going to divorce me. I am making her go to the fucking boonies and she's going to divorce me. So I'm like a little scared, but I'm like trying to like find a map to Nashville. I'm like, okay, we're like a few hours from Nashville, like 4 hours or something like that. I don't remember how long it was, but I'm like, I think I can handle this. And then he's like, honey, I got a PCS, which I don't know what that stands for because it means something different in other military terms. But in this scenario, it's basically like a satellite station in a smaller town. And he's like, it's Gunnersville. So I Google Gunnersville, Tennessee, and I call him and I'm like, honey, Gunnersville, Tennessee doesn't even show up on Google Maps. He's like, I know, I've been Googling it myself and I can't find it. And I was like, oh my God. And he was like, I am so sorry. Like, he's just like devastated because he doesn't want to do this. And he's just like, my wife is going to hate me for the rest of our lives. Like, this is horrible. So finally, his like sergeant major came up to him, and she's like, "Gunny Champ, hope you like bass fishing." And my husband's like, "Why would you say that?" You know? And she's like, "Well, Gunnersville is on a big lake, and it's like really popular for. It's on Gunnersville Lake, and it's really popular for its bass fishing tournaments." And he's like, "Oh my fucking God," you know? And so then he's like, "Well, Sergeant Major, I'm having a really hard time finding Huntsville, Tennessee, or I'm having a hard time finding Gunnersville, Tennessee." She's like, "You're not in Tennessee, you're in Alabama." And he was like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, your RSS is Huntsville, Alabama, and your PCS is Gunnersville, Alabama." And he's like, "Oh, okay." So he calls me up and he's like, "Honey, it's Alabama, not Tennessee." So then I Google it and I just like, huge sigh of relief. It's almost like good that that happened the way that it did, because I went from the lowest of the low to where we are now. And it's like, okay, that's not so bad. Like, it could be way worse. It could be way, 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 way worse. We could literally be in the boonies. But no, it's been a cool experience living here, and I'm really happy to have it. I wish, sometimes things were a little bit different, but yeah, so that is how we ended up here in Gunnersville and in the South in general. We're really excited. My husband only has 8 months left out here on recruiting duty, and there are definitely going to be a lot of things that we miss about the South, and definitely the friends that we made here. But we are both ready to move on to a new adventure, some other place. Recruiting duty is really demanding and just really tough on him. And so he's excited to get back to the job that he does in the Marine Corps. And I'm just really excited to try another part of the country. Our hopes, fingers crossed, I don't know if I'm like, this is good that I'm putting it out there or not, but we really, really, really want to get Hawaii. There is a Marine Corps base on Hawaii. It's kind of, some people might say it's a long shot. Some other people might say it's easy. We're not really sure. There's like differing opinions. But one thing that we have in our favor is that the Marine Corps understands that recruiting duty is very difficult and it's hard on families. So they do try their best to put you in the place that you really want to go to next. And so it would be really awesome to be able to make this show for you guys in Hawaii in a few months. But yeah, we still have 8 months out here, still quite a bit of a time. I'm thinking about maybe right before we leave, I'll get an Alabama ID just to continue to fuck with people. I don't know. I think that might be kind of fun. But yeah, so we'll see. But thank you guys for hanging in with me on this second episode. I definitely feel a lot more confident and comfortable. I'm excited to continue to make some more content. And I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll talk again soon.